just waiting for the video to come live. Video's live.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular board meeting for the Cowichan Valley Regional District from Wednesday, October 13th, 2021. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize this meeting is taking place on the traditional unceded territories of Coast Salish peoples. And with that, we'll get underway. As we begin, Ms. Legault, are there any changes to the agenda this evening?
There are none.
Thank you. So with a motion to approve the agenda as presented, moved by Director Sebring, seconded by Director Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item M1 is the adoption of the regular board meeting minutes of September 22nd.
If there's no errors or omissions, moved by Director Yanni DiNardo, seconded by Director Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're moving to public input period, and I'm just bringing the participant, Christine Deptuck, into the meeting.
Good evening,
Hello.
Ms. Deptuck. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Board of Directors. This is in reference to the Development Variance Permit DVP 21D03, which is item CR17 on the agenda. My name is Christine Deptuck, and my husband James and I live directly beside the property at 4370 Kingscote Road. We want to thank the Electoral Area Services Committee for their recent decision to deny this variance. We are hopeful that this meeting will also come to the same conclusion. We would like to provide some additional information for your consideration. Please see our attachments 12 through 16. The applicant, Maria Kyle, is not the owner on title of this property. She is the tenant in a building with no occupancy permit. Preston Partridge has been the owner on title since 2014. It would have been more useful to all involved if this owner and developer had been present to attest to his actions over the past 6 years. CBRD Development Services staff and the applicant referred to the encroachment area as the back corner of the building and a 12-inch sliver. It is a scalene triangle in shape and is not insignificant. The adjustment area was surveyed in April 2018 during our boundary adjustment and contractual negotiations with the property owner. See newer lot plan EPP 81528, attachments 12 and 13 for details. The two survey markers that are at the rear of the dwelling are 1.25 feet apart in width, and the line runs 24.69 feet in length to a third survey marker. To put it into perspective, the side of their dwelling is 60 feet long, so the boundary adjustment area is almost half the length of that side of their three-story dwelling. On October 8th, the property was newly listed for sale and advertised on MLS and other real estate listings. The advertising is misleading to potential purchasers and seems to promote issue areas as potential perks for the new owner. See attachments 15 and 16. How is the potential buyer to be aware of the formal bylaw infraction complaint on this property? The MLS Realtor.ca advertisement offers an additional building site with existing home as the carriage house, but Preston Partridge has already gone through this process himself and been denied because of water considerations. The Realtor's listing suggests this is the perfect B&B rental. Although RR1 zoning allows for a B&B, we believe the existing dwelling does not meet the criteria for building height, accessory building, or owner resident. Following are the notes that appear to all realtors who wish to view this property with their clients. Variance dispute CVRD and final occupancy will be issued after resolved. 6 inches of the home was built in the setback, and 2 solutions are posed to council. Encroachment is on setback, not any neighboring property. Home warranty started 2016. Building site above will require a development permit that fits within the municipal guidelines for new construction. Whether this property sells or not, the actions of this property owner and the unaddressed issues devalue our property, and these ongoing issues will still remain the same for any owner of that property. The last 6 years have been difficult and stressful for our family. We have had to put in a lot of time and effort and have been negotiating in good faith. The outcome we're still hoping for is to continue with the boundary adjustment and contract documentation while addressing the health, safety, and privacy concerns. Thank you again for allowing us the opportunity to voice our concerns.
Thank you, Ms. Deptuck.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did have the applicant for this item also requested to appear but hasn't joined the meeting. So moving on from public input period, there are no delegations. On to committee and commission reports.
Great, thank you. So just so you folks know, the reason I keep getting this backwards is the red light is on here when you're speaking, and on my screen, the mute button is red when you're muted, so I keep getting it backwards. So that takes us down to CR1, Ms. Legault, and I'll turn it over to Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The report and recommendation of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting for October 6th is recommendations. There are 1, 2, 3, and 3 parts to 3 that I move first.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for those? Seconded by Director Wilson. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Director
Thank
Yanni
you. I'll
DiNardo.
continue. Thank you. With the electoral area directors only vote on the following. 1, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and 9. I move those.
And seconded by Director Smith. Discussion. This is for electoral area directors only. Director Acton.
You mean 4?
Items 4 through 9.
4 through 9.
Okay.
Thank you.
You said 1. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
4 through
4
9
through
for
9.
electoral area directors only. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move on to CR2, report and recommendation of the Special Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of October 7th, 2021. And there is 1 recommendation there.
Thank
I
you.
move that.
Director Acton, is that a second, or do you want to speak to it?
I'd like to speak to it, please.
Thank you. Did we have a seconder for the motion before we take speakers? Seconded by Director Salmon. Go ahead, Director Acton.
Thank you. This motion, I think it would be better. I would support it going to director's services. I think that's where these kind of decisions should be made. It's made off the cuff without actually totally understanding the consequences of doing something like this. If I can just explain how I feel. So when I started as an elected official, I really enjoyed some of the conferences. I wouldn't have attended all of them, but especially at first, it builds some confidence. It teaches some skills. It allowed us to see what was going on in other areas of the country, which gave us the confidence in the CVRD for certain issues, and just understanding that we had a different set of peers. And I think that this was really valuable. And it was also valuable for just building friendships at the board table, which has proved to be useful when we all try and work together. So I really think that this is just kind of a nickel and diming of the directors when I think of how little support we have as an electoral area director. Sorry if any municipal directors feel this way, but I know that we really feel we don't have a lot of support. We don't have a lot of resources to our disposal that maybe a municipality may have. And to take this away as well, we're not in my opinion, the remuneration is not high enough either. We are limiting people who can be in this position already, and then taking this away, we're also backing directors into the corner. So I would like to hear from the municipalities maybe, where maybe it's not an emotional opinion and based just on taxes. When we look at how small this is, it's not actually going to affect anyone's tax budget or requisition at the end of the day, and it actually can add a lot of value and create a lot of amazing outcomes for people's community. So I'm really concerned about this. And then to just leave it up to, it puts staff in a really awkward position as well.
Thank you. I've got on the speakers list Director Sebring, Director Wilson. I'll just speak to it from a municipal perspective. I assume Director Sebring's going to do the same. Our policy is the mayor and 1 member of council per conference. You know, that's always amendable at budget time if another member of council is really determined to go. But that's what our policy is. Prior to that, the mayor would attend once per term with no members of council attending FCM. But we did make the change to have the mayor and one member of council eligible under policy to attend yearly. But I'll put it over to Director Sebring and then Director Wilson. Director Sebring.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got no dog in this hunt. I fully appreciate where Director Acton's coming from. Just our municipal perspective, we do the same as Ladysmith. We've done it for years. It used to be the mayor and two councillors, and we would rotate, and that was back when we had 3-year terms, so that everybody had an opportunity to go to FCM once in the term on council, and the mayor would go all 3 years. When we hit our Catalyst budget challenge back in 08-09, we cut it back to just the mayor, and then we brought it back up to the mayor, one councillor, and we do it by random draw. Everybody sticks their business card in a hat at a meeting, and we pull a name. And if you bin, your name doesn't go back in the hat for the subsequent years. So that's how we do it, just for whatever that's worth. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Director Wilson and then Director Nicholson, I believe. Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm a little bit concerned about the term nickel and diming here. The cost per director, financially and ecologically, for these, especially with FCM, considering it's held all over the country, is significant. And to call it a minor cost is certainly not, to my mind, pardon me, a true representation of what it actually is. So is Director Acton suggesting that any director can attend FCM at any time, regardless, because that would, to a certain extent, contradict what the municipalities are certainly doing? And to me, this recommendation makes perfect sense financially, ecologically, and every other way that it's put forward. And I'm going to support it fully.
Thank you. I'll go to Director Nicholson next and then Director Acton.
Well, thank you very much. And as I put forward this policy, I am thrilled to hear Director Wilson talk about the ecological benefits of this. I really feel strongly that it would be irresponsible for us to be sending more than 3 people a year to far-flung places around the nation, although I think it is important and useful to attend FCM once, probably in a term, just to get a different perspective on local government issues. But honestly, I think UBCM and AVICC are much more useful. And I would challenge people who have gone to FCM to provide me with some, and who think it is so important, to provide me some concrete examples of what exactly has been achieved by attending. Yeah.
Thank you. Director McGonigal, and then I'll come to Director Acton on round 2. Director McGonigal.
Thank you very much. Similar to Ladysmith and North Cowichan, it's the mayor and one councillor that is chosen for FCM attendance. I don't see another opportunity for municipal and regional district leaders to network with ministers of the Canadian Parliament. And for the value at one of those conferences, there was networking with a certain minister, and funds came to the town of Lake Cowichan for improvements to the Centennial Ballpark in conjunction with that networking. I think that to go once, at least, to FCM is important. To note that regardless of how big or small your community is across Canada, we share the same concerns and the same problems as large and small communities across the country. 3 directors does not seem inappropriate to me. I think that gives everyone an opportunity through the term to attend should they wish.
Thank you. Director Acton, if I may, I'll keep you on the first slot in round 2. Okay. Director McGonigal spoken, Director Martman, and then Staples.
Thank you, Chair. And I do understand and respect everybody's viewpoint I'd just like to put this into context, though, because this policy came out of deliberations around the budget for electoral areas, and that budget was 5% plus over for an increase. And there was a challenge out there by a couple of the directors to let's get this down to zero. And so this is one of many line items that was looked at, and it's about moving from 5 people going each year to 3. And so that got us down. This is one of many that got us down to a 0.22 increase, and I think that that's admirable. And I guess that's the context of why this is like it is today in terms of the policy coming forward to the board. I just wanted to share that with the members that weren't there.
Thank you. I have Director Staples next, and then back.
Thank you. Yeah, I support this. I do think it's important for there to be representation. The city doesn't actually have the same policy as the other municipalities, and ours is only if it is, I believe it's west of Alberta, or not west of, I can't remember. But I've never in all of my years, so this is my 9th year being on council, and no one has ever gone before because it has never been close enough under our policy. That being said, one of the things that I've appreciated about the pandemic is being able to finally attend, even though it was virtually. But I have been a part of a number of things that happened because people went to FCM and connected with ministers, collected people here, and then we went forward. The climate caucus is one of those things, as an example. Having Minister McKenna come here when she was Minister of Climate Change, it spurred on the Vancouver Island Climate Committee, and so that's just one of many examples. And I think with housing, with mental health and addictions, with climate change, among other things, infrastructure costs, I think it's really important to have representation, and so that those connections are made, because that is actually how effective change can happen, is when we are reaching out to work with other levels of government, and it is the hardest government for us to connect with here on the West Coast. So I support this.
Thank you. Director Acton, did you want to have a few more words? I don't have anyone on my first round speakers list. No. I'm just hearing the discussion. I do want to say that I see it, for example, Town of Lake Cowichan was brought up earlier today about the size of population versus, say, Shawnigan Lake. Mayor and one councillor each year over a 4-year term for 3,000 some odd people versus one director for a population of over 8,000 people through a 4-year term. Again, Town of Ladysmith and Shawnigan Lake are very similar in both tax base and in terms of the need to attend conferences and call it what you will, advocacy, lobbying, meeting, networking, but to advocate for the positions within the region or their specific area within the region, projects, et cetera. I did find it very valuable. I'm glad we changed our policy. I have had very direct and fruitful meetings with members of Parliament and staff, both on derelict vessels, meeting with staff at the in the ministries affected, and leaders, as well as around issues around water, around reconciliation. I've had the good opportunity to be able to meet with ministers both in Halifax and in Ottawa in particular, that were really fruitful around moving important issues forward. And I don't think that this year or in virtual settings, those kinds of opportunities can be replicated. You don't sit at the same table, have dinner, spend time together, be able to really sit down at a table and share a presentation with a member of Parliament and or their staff like you can in person. But that being said, it's up to the electoral area directors how they shape their policies. This does affect finances, so Ms. Legault, just a quick question. This would be a vote of the full board, though. This isn't, okay. So as it is a financial matter, it is the purview of the whole board. But just, some thoughts for consideration as we go to a vote. But I do see Director Marsh wants to speak to it.
Thank you, Chair Stone. This is, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, one of those awkward times when municipal directors vote on a financial issue that doesn't cost their citizens anything. Am I correct?
Yeah, the whole board always votes on finance.
Yeah.
And it is a policy issue for the board.
Yeah.
Thank you. I saw Director Morrison and then Director Acton.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it is somewhat of a fiscal question, but I think Director Acton, inserted a very reasonable approach to how this could be discussed, because this came up as a budget item during a special budget meeting, and we, this was a policy made for next year and future years if it isn't changed. I think there's merit in having a discussion at the select committee on not just remuneration and code of conduct, but this is something that is, I think, part of a learning curve for new directors. You don't go to FCM once and be effective in all of those things that Chair Stone spoke about. So I look at this as a bit of a missed opportunity. It may seem reasonable in the fiscal constraints that we have right now. I think it's worth some more discussion, and I think that it may seem reasonable to some now, but I think there should be it'd be more than reasonable to discuss it at the select committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have, just let me see, make sure I didn't miss anyone on my speakers list. I do see Director Sebring. So, that would be achieved by a referral motion, I suppose, but I'll go to Director Sebring.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to come back to some things some other directors have said. I mean, this comes out of Electoral Area Services budget 250, as I understand, which is only funded by electoral areas. And I not that I want to avoid voting on this, but I really don't feel I have a role voting on this. This is not something that impacts my requisition, my ratepayers in terms of what they pay to the CBRD. How are we even in a position where us municipal directors are being essentially forced to vote on something in which we have no interest?
I think that as directors of a regional organization, we have a fiduciary responsibility to every citizen within the regional district. That's laid out quite clearly in legislation.
Makes no sense.
I appreciate it, though. I appreciate what you're saying. I do have Directors Nicholson and Acton. I believe, Director Nicholson, I saw your hand.
This did come up in a budget discussion, but it has been an issue that's kind of been on my mind for several years. And I feel fairly strongly that from a taxpayer's point of view, that we need to be very careful with dollars. And I agree that you don't learn how to be effective at these kinds of meetings the first time round. But I do think where we miss the mark is how we are strategically working together as either electoral area directors or as a whole board to manage issues that we need to take forward federally to achieve some outcome that we really need the federal government's support on. And I don't think we do that very well. And I think it's done in a very ad hoc way. And I think that if we maybe limited the amount of money we spent going to these trips, we would be a little bit more careful on what we expect to get out of each trip. And there should be more discussion around that and more strategic kind of thinking to get us there. So I really feel that this is not going to preclude that kind of thing happening, but it will perhaps make budgeting a little easier.
Thank you. Director Acton, to close?
Sure. to
Question
close.
mark?
I appreciate the comments on being strategic about attending. Those are good points. So this is a policy that likely next year, I understand decreasing the budget because likely next year there may not even be one. And we're at the end of the term. And there's probably, an interest to reduce taxes. Requisition. But we're setting up for the next round of directors who may not even know now we're limiting them. And we've created this policy. We've created some work for staff to go ahead, create a policy. And it just came out of a budget meeting. We could leave the budget how it is. And this could be thought out a little better. And to the point of some directors, and we've all said, we're almost like a mayor without a council. Maybe we could all benefit from using these opportunities more. So understanding that, to Director Nicholson's point, being more strategic, but why put limitations on it or to a certain person? Maybe we have a person who's really amazing at coordinating these kind of things, and they end up being our representative. Like, why put limits? I just think, sorry, it's getting a little off the cuff here, but I think we've created some limitations that might actually hurt us without thinking about it when we were actually just doing a budget meeting. So this policy, I agree, should go to Director Services, and we can talk about it then. Nothing's going to change between now and then. So I just, that's my point, but I see that everybody's already made up their mind, so I won't even make a motion to defer unless someone else wants to.
Okay, I'm not seeing any motions to refer, so we do have a motion on the floor. No further speakers. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? Directors Acton and Morrison opposed. The motion carries. Not to be a steward of bad governance, but next time the conversation comes up, policies can be waived. So you guys can figure it out if you feel a commanding reason why some more than 3 should go. Moving on, which speaks to Director Acton's point in hindsight. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item CR3 is report and recommendations of the Corporate Services Committee of today's date. A few items that came forward from this afternoon's meeting.
Not to put you on the hot seat, Director Wilson, but it says Director McGonigal, but as you vice-chaired the chair today, I think you should read forward those recommendations from earlier today. Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I looked at that and I thought, well, look, Tim's going to have to read it out. Report and recommendations of the Corporate Service Committee of today, October the 13th, 2021. Director Wilson. Recommendations, there are quite a few there, and I'm going to do them in blocks. Recommendation 1, which has 2 parts to it. Do you want me to read the whole lot? I can do if you want.
It's up to you. Director Yanni DiNardo set a beautiful precedent when she put them forward, but these were not on the agenda prior to publication, so for those at home, it may be suitable to read them through.
Absolutely. Yep.
In your best auctioneer.
Absolutely. That it be recommended to the board that the 2021 budget for Function 109, Emergency 911, be amended to, number 1, increase transfer from capital reserves by $150,000, and number 2, to increase capital furniture, fixtures, and equipment by $150,000. Number 2, that it be recommended to the board on October the 13th, 2021, that the 2021 budget for Function 205, Emergency Planning, be amended to, number 1, increase provincial conditional by $605,075. Number 2, reduce consultants by $174,000. Number 3, increase wages hourly by $300,000. Number 4, increase building costs by $199,925,000. Number 5, increase emergency support services by $149,150. Number 6, increase public education by $130,000. Number 3, that it be recommended to the board on October the 13th, 2021, that the 2021 budget for function 351, fire protection, Massachi Lake, be amended to, number 1, increase provincial conditional by $350,000, and number 2, increase capital buildings by $350,000. And number 4, that it be recommended to the board, excuse me, on October the 13th, 2021, that the 2021 budget for function 355, fire protection, Malahat, be amended to, number 1, increase provincial conditional by $25,000, and number 2, increase buildings by $25,000. That, Mr. Chair, is the report from that meeting.
And do you move those items?
I do.
And we have a seconder by Director McGonigal. Any discussion? After the protracted discussions we had this morning, Director Martman.
This one is actually for any public that is watching this. If staff could just mention what provincial conditional is.
Pending grant applications that have been, I believe, approved, Ms. Legault, but not necessarily signed off on yet. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item CR4 is report and recommendations of the Regional Services Committee meeting of September 22nd.
Over to you, Director Salmon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a report of the Regional Services Committee meeting of September 22nd, 2021. There are 2 recommendations there, and then I would like to move those.
Sorry, I was looking at my paper, seconded by Director Wilson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Or was that a discussion point, Director Sebring? Just voting?
Yeah, just on this MRDT, moving some of this into housing. I was at a Chamber of Commerce board meeting today. They're not weighing in on this specifically because it's not their thing, but they've had meetings with Tourism Vancouver Island and Tourism Cowichan, and there's still some concern in those circles about particularly bullet 2. So I don't know if a motion to sever is appropriate here, but the motion as it's before us right now, I'm not going to be able to support. So thank you.
So you do recognize that this is to ask staff to report back as per the direction of the previous board, who was also uncomfortable with the MRDT being used for affordable housing?
Yeah,
I just want to clear.
No, fair enough.
Okay.
From my perspective, I'd prefer that we just not go down that road at all, but that's just me.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. I was thinking too that maybe we had approved it, but then I remembered. So anyway, my apologies. So do you want to sever it then? We'll call the question on 1 and 2 separately so that you can support the first one. Any further discussion? Did I miss anyone? Okay, we'll call the question on number 1. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Moving on to number 2. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in, Director Morrison.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I haven't gone back to review the meeting notes, but for some reason, I thought there was some discussion of options, including affordable housing. I didn't think we were just getting a report back on the potential for on that online platform revenues being for affordable housing. I thought we were going to talk about whether or not they can be directed to bylaw enforcement and those items. So I'm not comfortable with the wording the way it is and would amend it.
Thank you. I would have to refer that to staff. I guess the only solution here would be to refer that part back to committee, that part of the motion that's being voted on separately, but I don't know if a member of staff can speak to it. My understanding of it from our municipal discussions is that you cannot use it for other things. It can be affordable housing and or tourism promotion, but I don't know if staff has more clarity there.
Well, I believe based, excuse me, Mr. Chair, on the previous
Your microphone, Mr. Carruthers, we can't hear you.
Thank you. Based on the discussion, I believe staff were going to look into kind of accessory issues to the affordable housing. So as Director Morrison stated, enforcement of those kinds of things, whether they would be eligible. So we'll make sure that that we include some of those broader issues around affordable housing when we do that report back.
Thank you. Now I remember the discussion, and the bylaw enforcement was seen as a way to protect affordable housing as well as build it, or instead of building it. Thank you. Any further discussion? Director Smith. We can't hear you. Showing you muted on our screen, so there you go.
Did it go?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I apologize. I am not sure what's happened here, but I can't support this this motion. I think that we do more damage to the tourism industry by not recommending that it go towards the tourism industry. Affordable housing has been highlighted by the provincial government, the federal government, and we already have a Cowichan Housing Association that the taxpayers are funding with $750,000 a year. And we don't have that kind of funding going into tourism. So I will not support even this recommendation at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm having deja vu with the discussions that we had at the previous meeting, but if we wish to rediscuss the same points and vote the same way, I'll go through the speakers list. I have Directors Marsh, then Director Kuhn.
Yeah, I understand that point of view, and in normal times that would make a lot of sense to me. But given that a lot of units are taken off the rental housing market to be used for vacation rental because for whatever reason, but they do make more money for the owner. I do support this. We're in a very unusual housing bubble that, you know, hopefully it does bust one day, but until it does, we have people living in cars and RVs, and I would also suggest that we as a board look at allowing tiny homes at some point in the future, if we could have that on a future agenda. But at this point, I support this, and then I have to go let my dog out if we call the vote soon.
Thank you. Director Kuhn.
We have an affordable housing function, and it stands on its own, and this is supposed to go to tourism, and I will not support this motion to
Thank you.
funnel the money into affordable housing.
Thank you. Director Wilson. So I'm going to take privilege as chair for a sec to say I'm hearing deja vu. Like, we had these arguments. We should just vote with our conscience if we want to relitigate it. And I do find it that those who seem to complain about relitigating things at the board often do it when we come to the board. Director Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll pass.
Appreciate it. See what being in the room together can do? Yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And those opposed? And we have directors Yanni DiNardo, McGonigal, Kuhn, Wilson, Smith, Sebring opposed. If I missed anyone, hold your hand up. I think I got everyone. The motion carries. We have everyone here. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
That is my report, Mr. Chair.
Pardon me, sorry?
That is my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Salmon. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On to item CR5, which is report and recommendations of the Community Services Committee meeting of September 8th. This was a recommendation that was inadvertently missed from the last report to the board.
Thank you very much. Go over to Director Nicholson.
And the Community Services Committee recommends that data collection for the upcoming regional recreation facility use analysis be designed to report on Area G Gulf Island users separately from the remainder of Solterre.
Thank you. Any discussion? It's moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Smith. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor and opposed? Directors Yanni DiNardo, Morrison, McGonigal, Marsh, Kuhn, and Stone opposed. Motion carries. Is that right? Same numbers? 9-6. 5? And that motion carries by the same margin as the last. Look at that, we're moving right along. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On to staff reports. Items SR1, staff report from Recycling and Waste Management Division on 2021 budget amendment for Bings Creek Transfer Station, and the proposed recommendation is that the 2021 budget for Function 520 Solid Waste Management Complex be amended to 1. Increase repairs and maintenance by $177,500 and increase transfer from capital reserves by $177,500.
I believe that's moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Yanni DiNardo. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor and opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Director Marsh, I hope your dog's okay. Moving on, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item SR2, staff report from the Emergency Management Division regarding UBCM Community Resiliency Investment Program Fire Smart Community Funding and Supports Grant Application. And the proposed recommendation is that a grant application for up to $325,000 be submitted to UBCM Community Resiliency Investment Program, Fire Smart Community Funding and Supports, with the CVRD as the primary applicant that will apply for, receive, and manage the grant funding on behalf of all partners.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to the board. Moved by Director Acton, seconded by Director Nicholson. Discussion. Oh, sorry, Director Nicholson? Or did I heard somebody? Oh, it was Director Acton, but I'll go to Director Nicholson and then back to Director Acton.
Thank you. I actually had a question for staff. I think this Fire Smart stuff is extraordinarily important for our communities, like Area E, living out near the forest, in the forest actually. And I am wondering, seems to be very geared towards Ladysmith, and so I'm wondering what's planned for down south and whether this will benefit from that or not.
I had nothing to do with it. Through to staff. Mr. Who do we have from? Oh, there you are. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Director Nicholson. First of all, I'd like to compliment April Diver for all of the work she's done on Fire Smart this year, and she is taking a well-deserved vacation. So I'll try to answer questions to the best of my ability. Within this particular grant application, yes, there are some activities for Ladysmith, but there are also activities for each electoral area, especially in the areas of education and assessment.
Thank you. Director Acton, then Sebring, Morrison, I believe, and if I've missed you, put up your hand. Director Acton.
Thank you. I guess I have two questions. So we've had a Fire Smart presentation in our community. I guess I could be considered the person who hosted it, and the fire department came and CVRD came. And so I guess my question is, how's it going to be different than something like that? Why would we now need to get a grant and hire 2 more people? And then my second question is, have we considered, does this affect any of the items? We've taken items off of our strategic plan because staff was too busy. And things have been that I think were really actually quite crucial are put on the side burner, but now we have the capacity to do this. So I'm wondering what's changed and how is it going to be different?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Director Acton. So on the first question, I'm sorry, I cannot speak to the specifics of whether it would build on previous community presentations. My assumption is that it would. Regarding the second question in capacity, the board has approved moving toward a regional emergency program and assuming additional expenses in building capacity to take on various things in the future. So we're looking in that particular area based on board direction of additional activity.
Thank you. And on the second part, so you go ahead, Director Acton, if you had a follow-up. I think Mr. Carruthers wanted to speak to this as well.
Well, so I guess I'm confused where we have, as a board, we've asked that we hire more people in order to do this. We've had this service already, essentially. So
I can put it through to Mr. Carruthers because I think he can explain it, but my understanding was this is a complement to a direction that the board has already given to staff around emergency management, especially experiencing what we did this last two years with flooding and fires, but Mr. Carruthers, I think, wants to speak to it.
Well, I could just add to that, Chair Stone, that this falls under our climate adaptation work, and that climate adaptation work is consistent throughout your strategic plan, and it's arguably one of the biggest risks to our community in terms of impacts of climate change. As we experienced last year, we had the EOC activated twice for wildfire, first time in the CVRD's history. So as far as any of the work that's been put on hold, we're gradually getting back up to speed, as I reported out at my last report to the board. But I think this is one of those strategic objectives. The strategic plan doesn't account for every single thing that's going to come up, but this project is very well aligned with your current strategic objectives, both in public health and safety and your climate adaptation.
Okay, thank you.
And the extra money provides the resources to be able to do it.
Thank you. I saw Director Sebring, but I think you waved me off. Thank you. Director Morrison, and then Director Marsh.
Thank you, and forgive me for maybe sort of drilling down more than we normally would, but I'm just looking in I think we're in the second appendix of the report where there's a component of this, and I think it's the stream 2, which is limited to the provision of services in regards to provincial crown land, and that's the part that is working with Flindward for the delivery of fire smart community funding and supports programs. So I guess I pose the question because of we're surrounded by private managed forest lands who are responsible for that. So is it the expectation of staff, if we're successful in this grant, that is that the stream where they're going to be working with, is directing it towards provincial crown lands and fire smart in those areas? There's obviously needs in the small communities that are surrounded by the private managed forest lands, but it seems like this is not going to be particularly applicable, at least that portion of the grant, to a lot of the areas that are mostly privately held industrial forests.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair to Director Morrison. So I'm sorry, I can't speak at that level of specificity to the grant. I can say that the Emergency Management Division is intending to engage with stakeholders in any of the activities that it's pursuing here through this grant application.
Thank you. I just want to speak to that there are areas within, oddly within the CVRD that have significant crown lands around the communities. Ladysmith is one of them. And that may speak to why some of the activities seem directed around Ladysmith. Most of Ladysmith is actually ringed by crown land, and the land that is not crowned directly up against the community's interface areas are ones that have been privatized through agreements with First Nations. I have Director Marsh, then Martman, then McGonigal.
Yeah, this is just a little anecdote. This morning on my street, there was a water main break. So I got up, ready to have my breakfast and get ready to come to this meeting, and I had no water. And then I remembered that I had some water that I had put into big gallon containers when the Ladysmith fire was happening, because we were told here that we should be on alert in case we had to be evacuated. And I realized in that half an hour when I thought, oh my God, I'm not going to have any water for whatever, how in a way vulnerable. It felt like my dog was thirsty. I needed a coffee, that kind of thing. And I think given that there's a code red in climate and we've had 2 heat domes, I just find it a little bit hard to fathom why we would not want to get some grant money to help us more educate residents. And I'll just say something that I've done as a result of UBCM. I learned in a workshop that the province, and I urge all area directors to consider this, the province has these signs. I wish I'd brought one here. Green, okay, we turn it over. Red, help. And they're to be used in times of disaster, which could be fires or floods or earthquake or storms that knock your power out, you know. And I just really think we should support this. I mean, I can't imagine what the public would think if we didn't get some grant money to try and protect them from the years of forest fires and other disasters, but mainly forest fires that are coming. So I'm going to go let my dog in. Are you going to call the vote before I get back, Mr. Chair?
Well, I hope my speakers list doesn't continue to grow, so we may, but I'll try and, I'm sure somebody will put up their hand to drag it out just long enough.
Oh, wait.
I have Director Martman and then McGonigal. Director Martman.
This might drag it out. I apologize if it does. The question I have comes out of the staff report, and it refers to the $287,000 of activities that would qualify. And so that made me go to the Appendix B, which has the details for the $287,000. And in that, I'm trying to understand how Area H ends up with what I consider to be a very small amount of funding. And so, which leads me to wonder and ask the staff, are these population based? What's the rationale for developing this? Because I would like to see Area H have more. And so I'm sure we all would, but I see relative to other areas like Area G, we're about 1/3. So can staff speak to this?
I can speak to the governance errors that were just spoken to in your plea for more money to one individual area, but I'll put the question through to staff.
Mr. Chair, through to Director Martman, all I can say is that our Emergency Management Division, our Emergency Program Coordinator, evaluates the needs and prioritizes to the best of her ability when she puts together these grant applications. So I cannot speak to whether it was population-based or some other measure that got to these numbers, but I'm just going to suggest that she's looked at the need in each of these areas and put the budget together accordingly.
I can have a follow-up?
Go ahead.
So I was asking for a formula rather than saying, one area deserves other. What brought it to my attention was the difference in areas. And I guess what comes back to me, and with all due respect that Ladysmith is surrounded by Area G and Area H, we did have a major fire in Area H, and that brought a lot of community concern. And so when you start talking about fire smart community funding and prioritizing, I'm just not seeing it reflected in this budget. And so I would, with all due respect, I just wanted to understand the 287,000 because that's what is being put into this grant proposal and what money is going to get spent on.
Thank you. I don't know, Mr. Elzinga, if you have more to add. My understanding of the way Ms. Driver and the whole emergency management is based on a risk assessment, and that funds are prioritized based on risk assessment, and this follows on significant previous funding that was allocated. I'm not sure how that was allocated area by area, but when we're talking about emergency preparedness, it should be done on a risk-based assessment, and I would have confidence in our staff to do that. And I'm not a risk assessor, nor an engineer, a forester, or any other thing, and so I trust our staff when they bring recommendations forward that we are the governors, not the professionals, and we trust their professional opinion. But Mr. Elzinga, maybe you can elaborate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to say something similar to that, yes, I agree with you that this is a risk-based assessment for activities, and I don't know of any formula that was use to create these numbers.
Thank you.
Sorry, we will have some difficulty hearing in here. The HVAC contractors are desperately working overnight to improve our ventilation. Next on the speakers list is Director McGonigal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Not to belabor the topic, but I think FireSmart is an excellent program for risk assessment. And from the risk assessment comes remediation. And without that assessment of particular properties, it's pretty problematic to assess the risk. So for instance, the town of Lake Cowichan, is surrounded by lands similar to Area F&I, but within our own municipalities, we have done the assessments and the remediation with that grant funding very successfully. Upwards of 10 FireSmart communities within the town of Lake Cowichan. We've been spoken of at conferences on the FireSmart program. So I would encourage everyone to, after the public interest groups, to get out there with the assessment. That's where these funds are allocated for, to assess each property that is willing to come forward and do the remediation work that those dollars could accommodate.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. It's been moved and seconded, Ms. Legault. All those in favor? And those opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On to public hearings, item PH1. The proposed recommendation is that public hearing minutes and exhibits regarding CVRD bylaw number 4270, Cowichan Valley Regional District Official Community Plan for the Electoral Areas, bylaw 2021, be received.
Moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Yanni DiNardo. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On to bylaws. Item B1 is CVRD bylaw number 4402, Regional Board Procedures Amendment bylaw 2021 for first, second, and third readings.
Moved by Director Yanni DiNardo, seconded by Director Acton. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item B2, CVRD bylaw 4403, Committee and Commission Procedures Amendment bylaw 2021 for first, second, and third readings.
Moved by Director Wilson, seconded by Director McGonigal. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item B3, CVRD bylaw 4398, Cobble Hill Village Sewer System Service Amendment, Boundary Extension for PID 008080755, bylaw 2021 for adoption.
Moved by Director Wilson, seconded by Director Nicholson. Any discussion? None. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. BEA1, CVRD bylaw 4397, Electoral Area B, Shawnigan Lake Zoning Amendment bylaw 1770, Shawnigan Mill Bay Road, 2021 for first and second reading.
For electoral area directors only, moved by, sorry about the noise, Director Salmon, seconded by Director Yanni DiNardo. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. BEA2, CVRD bylaw 4270, Cowichan Valley Regional District Official Community Plan for the Electoral Areas, bylaw 2021 for third reading.
Moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Salmon. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Ms. Legault.
CVRD bylaw 4270, Cowichan Valley Regional District Official Community Plan for the Electoral Areas, bylaw 2021 for adoption.
Moved by Director Salmon, seconded by Director Nicholson. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. So I believe that takes us to question period, Ms. Legault. And do we have any requests this evening?
There are no requests to participate in question period.
So now that we no longer have a 10-minute recess, I believe that takes us to adjournment. Yes. Oh, a motion to go into closed session. Section 91C. 91C. Moved by Director Marsh, seconded by Director Morrison. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. We'll take a 5-minute recess and then we'll resume our closed session. Thank you for those of the public who joined us this evening. Have a good evening.